think you did say you were present during 9/11. So can you tell me your story, I guess, where you were, what all you experienced with all that?
I had locked up a guy that summer of 2001 for a couple of stolen cars. He was in Rikers Island. He wanted a flip. He was going to give us a guy in a Department of Motor Vehicles that was pumping out driver's licenses. So on September 11th, I came to my office, I think at 7 o'clock in the morning. The plan was to leave my office by 8, get down to Manhattan Court by about 9, park the car. He was going to get pulled out of Department of Corrections, and it's called Queen for a day, where it's a proffer session. It was going to be myself, my sergeant, a district attorney, and his attorney. And he was going to tell us the information he had, and we couldn't use it against him. And we were going to weigh it. And if it seemed valuable, we would get him out as an informant. I get to my office at 7. My sergeant's nowhere to be found. 8 o'clock, my sergeant's nowhere. Now I'm starting to call him. He comes strolling into the office a little after 8. And I'm like, come on, you got to move your ass, because the Bronx to Manhattan is a little bit of a hike. And then you got to find parking. Then you got to clock in. It's time consuming. So while I'm waiting for my sergeant to get ready, our office was on the second floor of the housing police. A housing cop comes running into our office and goes, put on the TV, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. So we're watching it. You got to remember, New York City's got 3 major airports: LaGuardia, JFK, and Newark. Then you got Teterboro. There's a bunch of airports around New York City area. So we were figuring some guy, private plane with a Cessna, had a heart attack or something and hit the World Trade Center. So as we're watching it, here comes the second plane. So we're like, oh shit. This is definitely terrorism. So we knew court obviously was over, and they told us get into uniform and stand by. And then probably about noon, they said, all right, we're going to caravan down the west side. We drove into Manhattan, parked on the west side. And just like you see on TV, there was firemen running all over the place. There was papers and debris flying all over the place. And they were handing out these little plastic things you put over your mouth, respirators that you would get, at Home Depot for like $1 if you were going to demo your bathroom. And they marched us in there. It was bizarre. The closer you got to ground zero, the darker it got because of all the particles. Just that dust covered everything. I remember seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of pairs of women's shoes. Because when they were fleeing, you can't run in high heels, apparently. They just tossed their shoes. Hot dog carts, taxi cabs. I mean, you friggin' name it. It was there. As we were coming down Broadway, I remember there was a guy in a white Tyvek suit with looked like a Geiger counter that walked by us, and we're like, who the fuck is that guy? Like, did he work with the government? Was he a guy from New Jersey who had a Geiger counter and figured today's the day to test it out? Mm-hmm. Don't know to this day. But when we got closer, we got to the pile, it was scary. It looked like there was a piece of the facade that had fallen hundreds of feet that was embedded into the ground. You really couldn't see that well, just with all the crap flying around, and it was dark. If you look down on the ground, there was a computer screen and some tchotchke from someone's desk. It was just all crazy shit, like thrown all over the place. And I was down there that day from about 1 o'clock till about 5 o'clock in the morning. They took us down to the east side and they decontaminated us by spraying our shoes and stuff with water, which really didn't decontaminate anything. And they told us to put our stuff in a washing machine and be back at our office at 5 o'clock the next night. And I did. We were back down there by about 7 o'clock the next night. I was there for the first couple of nights. They pulled us out, went back to doing enforcement work. We would go back and forth. And then after a couple of weeks or a week or two, we were on the pile. We were like ants. Picture ants on a sugar hill going in different directions. And everybody would, those joint compound buckets, guys would scoop debris and it would go down the line and it would get sorted out. Did that for a while. Since I worked in auto crime, I had to figure out what to do with all the debris. So there's this huge dump, I think it's called Fresh Kills or Arthur Kills, out in Staten Island, which had just recently closed. They reopened it. The place is like the surface of the moon. It's so high up, you could basically see New Jersey and the rest of Staten Island. It smells like farts from the methane. And they just started, when they figured out no one's going to be coming out of this thing, we better start getting in the heavy equipment and taking out tonnage at a time. And in the debris were cars in the garage, on the street that were crushed. So since I guess I worked in auto crime, they had us out there going through the crushed vehicles to make sure no one had perished inside one of the cars, which we never found anyone. That was a trip, just seeing rows and rows and rows of fire trucks and police vehicles. Made me mad, you know what I mean, just to see that stuff. But I remember the second or third night being down there at Ground Zero, because we were going in at night, late afternoon, early evening. People wrote shit like in the dirt, fuck you, Bin Laden. In like on the windshield of a car covered in debris. I remember there was a camper from A bunch of Chicago cops must have blown every light from Illinois to Lower Manhattan. There was a Winnebago from Chicago filled with Chicago cops that came down there to help. But it's like, I don't know why they were parked a couple of blocks from Ground Zero. I mean, I hope those guys are all right. I mean, considering the amount of time they must have spent breathing that shit in. But it was surreal. There was nothing I had 14 or 15 years by the time that happened, and there would have been nothing that could have prepared me for it.
So do you believe in the official narrative? I think there's a lot of inconsistencies. The 9/11 reports, intelligence agencies did say that, how you said before, they weren't communicating properly. FBI, CIA, they totally admitted that. Were you questioned by anything you saw? Was there anything suspicious that you questioned with that entire narrative?
When we were there, I think it was Building 7, the building they're talking about that came down later. Yeah, I saw that on fire. We before we started, well, let me back up. We commandeered like a Greyhound bus. And we were driving around a little bit before we got out and walked. And we saw Building 7 on fire. And it looked like something like you would see at like Hollywood studios, just flames coming out of the building. Like, holy shit. And we kept walking. I heard that come down while we were down there. And it sounded like a train coming through. I mean, it was just so loud. I'm not some superstar detective, but I have an investigative background. And I read the 9/11 Commission report. As a matter of fact, everybody in my office bought that book when it came out. It was a whitewash. Anybody with any investigative experience, it was nonsense. There was so much left out, especially I remember just like off the top of my head, 2 of the hijackers came in, I think from San Diego, and that's all they have. And they said, well, they must have had some kind of help. Well, if you knew where they lived, did you talk to the neighbors? Check their banking, obviously. They weren't paying everything cash. So my opinion is some of those guys were either followed or CIs that double-crossed the government. But yeah, I definitely think there's more to it. No, I don't believe the official narrative at all.
The Building 7 is really important because a lot of people don't even know about that. I've asked so many regular Americans who lived during that time, and you say Building 7, like, what's Building 7? Like, no, there was actually a third building. It's listed on Wikipedia that said it came down because of fire and debris. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Listen, if you go Google what the South Bronx looked like in the 1970s, there's thousands of abandoned buildings that burned up and they didn't collapse. Just Google 1970s South Bronx and you'll see thousands of photos of abandoned buildings littered the Bronx. And I'm sure Brooklyn was like that too. None of those buildings collapsed. I saw that building on fire and I heard it. I didn't see it come down. I was a couple of blocks away. I heard it come down. That's odd that it collapsed.
Yeah, I thought that was very strange. There's a lot of like weird financial dealings. Building 7, World Trade Center, a year or two before, Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney, they had control of like floors 17 to 37. There was a lot of very strange contracting going on there. The guy who actually benefited the most off of it, Larry Silverstein, who made the largest insurance claim in U.S. history, I think it was like $4 billion at the time. I think the first clue they said was that they, out of all the damage, they were able to discover a passport of one of the Saudi terrorists that somehow fell from the plane. The amount of anomalies in this, especially when it relates to the Middle East, and really do think that everyone had the patriotic sense to want to go fight, really anyone. And I think that we were led to believe that it was radical jihadist Muslims, and that really did encourage everyone, people that I knew, and some actually died that fought in Iraq for our country. And little did we know, we found out it was false intelligence. That's why I hope they open an investigation eventually. I'm not too trusting in our current federal government, but